against the Rebels, the first of 5 trans-Tasman clashes this weekend. Little kick out towards the wing, and it's a try to cut it race, and the Crusaders snap their losing run.
Tuipulotu kicking ahead, the bounce, Celestino,
Stevenson does it all himself.
This time he busts straight through. Tua accelerates. The unbeaten run is over.
Running for the line. He won't, will he? Oh my word! Looking to life for the Blues. They'll do it. They'll do it. Unbelievable from the Blues.
Kia ora koutou katoa, welcome to The Breakdown. An absolute pleasure to have your company this evening. A pleasure too to be joined by the team here. Jeff Wilson, Mills Miliaina back, and Sir John Kerwin back as well. Wonderful to have you here, team. How are you going?
Nice to be back.
How was, I mean, one of you's been in Invercargill, one of you's been in Italy. I might ask about Italy. How was it?
Yeah, it was great. It was good. Did some work, which was fine, and also caught up with my sons, so that was lovely as well. Watched a game of rugby, Benetton versus Glasgow. Yeah.
And then came back and presumably watched the Blues.
How good. How good are the Blues? Goldie, how good are the Blues? And they came straight after that beautiful performance by the Hollanders.
It's so good to have you back, mate.
Yeah, did you miss me?
No. Justin did a fantastic job in that seat for 3 weeks, and now I've got to look at you again, talk about the Blues. I can't believe that the Hollanders weren't in the opener, because their try was the best try of the night.
Oh, Folau Whakatāra.
Well, in Dunedin anyway, because it was the only try of the night in Dunedin, to be fair. But yes, your Blues are on fire. They're on fire.
Are they
Millsy, they're
favourites?
tough.
They're tough, all right. I mean, they've gone about it this whole season, really. We've been waiting for a little bit of spark. Now they're starting to get that mix right. I mean, Hoskins did 2-2 out there. You almost forgive someone to think he was a back. But the Reds, this was the game of the round.
If I said to you they'd make this comeback without Finlay Christie, without Stephen Pettiff, without San Sullivan, to be where they are right now, JK, Mills, Kimberley, I'm just looking at this going, this Blues team's a different Blues team. You know, and one of their coaches has gone on to coach the All Blacks, and Vern Cotter has come in, and this is a team now which, on this sort of form, with what they've got to come back in, they're close to being a title favourite.
What do you mean, close?
Yeah.
They are the title favourites. They've got to be. They've got to be for a couple of reasons. Before I went away, they were clunky at times, and they hadn't found that mix between the toughness, grinding people down. Like, if it was the Crusaders right now, playing like that, everyone's saying, no, they're going to win the title, they're going to win the title, because they're doing stuff that we'd say about the Crusaders in the past. Like, should they have won the game on Saturday night?
Against the Reds?
Yeah.
Well, it's a fascinating game, because both teams got gassed, and then all of a sudden the bench came on, Mills, and they went up a gear. And when you've got someone like Caleb Clark to come on and bring that sort of injection, and that was actually technically almost a rest week for him.
Yeah, why was he on the bench?
Well, he needed to have a break, and they've made some really obviously strong discussions with New Zealand Rugby about where these guys are at. Here's a guy that needs to play. And this is classed. He didn't train much during the week, if at all. He's gone and made his impact off the bench, and so this is going to count as a rest week for him. But he's looking back to his All Black form for me, Mills.
Well, he almost looked refreshed, even though he's come off the bench, right? So he obviously didn't train, but the fact that when he came off, man, he made a difference. And I like this about the Blues because, you know, they had 2 big wins in a row, right? A couple of weeks before that. Consistency has always been sort of one of their sort of downfalls over the past. You come to a big game and they lift again. The Reds, on the other hand, come off, a loss against Moana Pacifica. They beat the Chiefs. This was always going to be a huge game in terms of what, and it did. It provided that. For the Blues case, I just think the consistency's, right across from now. Since that loss, they have been to the Hurricanes. They have been a little bit clunky, but they've almost found now the balance between that expansive stuff. But what I really love is their hardness about their team, but not just the guys that are going on the field, like you've just spoken about, the guys that have come off the bench as well and lifted it to another level.
Well, you talk about toughness, you talk about grit, you talk about hardness, and this does bring me to another point I want to raise, which we talked about last week as well, which is in the forwards and the hardness and the grit that we've seen in the forwards, exemplified, in my mind, by one of my feel-good stories so far this year, which is Patrick Tuipulotu. What have you seen from him in this week particularly?
Oh, well, I'm seeing All Black form. Obviously, he's had some disappointments, but he's always been a great athlete. He's always had the ability to attack the line, to carry the ball, and also physically impose himself. So I think he's just also taken the captain's challenge, Mills, and run with it. So he's a real mature leader now, and he's a mature lock.
Yeah. And when you're talking about, I mentioned consistency, when it starts at the top with your captain, he's out with injury, came back after his jaw was broken. He's leading, and it's almost, it seems like he sort of relishes the fact that, hey, this is now what I have to do. I have to start hurting people in terms of my carries, how hard I carry, defensively when I'm around the edges, make sure guys lead with me. And he's just starting to show that, and that's probably one of the main reasons why his team is starting to follow.
If you look at him, though, and if I said to you that if Scott Barrett and Patrick Tuipulotu were wearing the 4 and 5 jersey for the All Blacks right now, I'd be more than comfortable with that. The big thing for me with Paddy is he just needs to stay out there. He's one of those players who gets a little bit unlucky from time to time, where he picks up a niggle or an injury when he starts to find and rediscover that form. And what we're seeing, particularly from him in the middle row at scrum time, when he is there, their scrum becomes a weapon again.
Are they two alike?
See, I don't think they are too alike.
Are they two reasons? I agree with you. I've got no problems with it. But are they two alike as players to play together? And do we need a bit more height against some of the Northern Hemisphere teams?
No, plenty of height there, plenty of ability for Scott Barrett to change his game, because he's been a 6 at the international level. He's rangy enough if he needs to be. I've got no issues with that whatsoever. I love what Paddy's bringing to that maturity you talked about, his leadership, but it's the consistency we're seeing.
I mean, loving seeing the Blues feel a little bit for the Reds, I've got to say, after the performance that they put in, especially from their young winger, who has inspired Mills's moments this week, I believe.
It has, Kim. It's inspired me to sort of look back the fact that his first run-on game for the Reds, and scored a hat-trick. I mean, some of those tries that he scored, and one in particular, this is his first one, by Sami over the top. As every good winger, chased really hard and getting into a good supportive line, but he still has to finish. And finish he did from almost 50 metres out. The second try, he obviously has to hold his width a little bit and make sure that he sort of is in line. He gets a nice wee ball, although the one downside is the ball is in the wrong hand, but he needed it because he was going to do a spectacular dive. Right? And this is why they call him, probably the reason why they call him the junkyard dog, woof, woof. Because he's jumping over and then the step to finish on debut. What great tries. So that has inspired me. And the first guy, really, that I want to talk about that's done this, he done it for a different team, really. He played the majority of his games for the Blues, but he played for the Highlanders. I believe he went down for the Highlanders against the Chiefs, Doug Howlett.
Well, he was playing
because you were injured, right?
I was injured. I got knocked out a couple of games before this, and so he came down and he was sort of picked out of a player pool. So he wasn't in the Blues per se. He was out of a wider training group. He came down and we had this game in Taupo, and he scored 3 tries, and I quickly told him to get back on a plane and go back to Auckland. He wasn't welcome because I didn't need anyone stealing my tries, but you could see then the talent and what was in store for him later on in his career.
Yeah,
a magnificent player.
I think he played for 4 franchises doing that pool play, didn't he? I'm pretty sure.
He might have.
3.
Yeah. He might have.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you're right. You obviously influenced them in terms of getting him shipped out of Dunedin and back up to Auckland, mate. But I didn't want to leave you out of this either, Goldie, because you have done the exact same thing. Let's get that smile on your face, mate. Come on. This is going down memory lane against Scotland. There you go. The good old locks. Look at that bloody great hair, mate.
Only time I ever played in a long sleeve jersey for the All Blacks. That's how cold it was in Murrayfield.
We used to have the choice, to
What's
cut
that?
them.
Did you? No, we just basically was that cold that day. Clearly, I've been on tour for a while. I hadn't seen any sun. Just from Invercargill to Scotland and England. Obviously, proud moment to be part of the All Blacks.
You've done that twice more, though, didn't you?
Debut.
You scored 3 tries and a couple more times?
A couple of other times. Samoa and Fiji, to be fair.
Nicely done.
Yeah.
And I must admit, those jerseys look pretty heavy too, so it must have slowed you down as well, mate. So, the next one, Christian Cullen. Cully against Samoa, and he played really well in this game. He was under the pump. Physically, they sort of tried to get in. Right, what about this? A little wee chipper, and an assist from Mr. Wilson.
This is when my try stopped, when Cully started scoring tries to the All Blacks. I gave him a gift then. He's remarkable.
That was the first Test match played in the provinces too, wasn't it? Or one of the earliest.
Napier. It was
in Napier, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was an awesome week.
Yeah, well, you're not wrong, because I think the week after they scored 4 tries against Scotland, right? So 3 and then 4.
Yep.
And the last one, another winger, Julian Savia. 2012 against the Irish. He on debut, and we all seen where he went on and some of the tries that he ended up scoring. He became, I mean, he almost was like, look at that, similar to, tries that Jonah would score, bumping guys off. But
The start of a remarkable career
didn't it?
in the All Black jersey.
Yeah, and he
and
did
still
it
going.
Yeah, he did it again against Georgia in the Rugby World Cup, and who could forget, against the French quarter-final as well.
How awesome was that?
Magical. Tim Ryan, you've inspired me to look at that, and if anything to go by those guys that I've just spoken about, that kid's got a big future.
Massive future.
Well, he's certainly got a great nickname, so give him that.
I won't bark again, should I? It's just...
Oh, it's the highlight of the show.
Where do you get the nickname, though? We've got to find that out.
So apparently, I was looking this up, apparently his teammate just dropped it one day in a podcast and then it stuck. So he's just gone, oh, this guy's like a junkyard dog, and now he's the junkyard dog.
Oh, we might see him again. A few more tries and we might be barking.
Joe Schmidt was there.
We might see
Joe Schmidt was there.
Golden jersey.
But
exactly.
I mean, pace.
Yes.
We've seen difference. You had pace, Cully had pace, Julian had size. That's why I sort of like that balance of wings.
Yeah.
You have the big guy and then the fast, but this guy's fast.
Yeah.
Right, let's move on, shall we, from one of the real highlights to, well, depending on your point of view, it's another real highlight, actually, but also one of the more controversial moments of the weekend. That is, of course, Samipeni Finau and his hit in the game against Waratahs on Tate Edmed. Completely legal. He did not get pinged for it in any way, shape or form, but has caused a bit of an uproar over in Australia, not least because it's not the first time that this has happened. Do you, my question is, have an issue with his technique at all?
I have an issue that we're talking about it. It's ridiculous that we're talking about it. It's ridiculous that someone across the Tasman is moaning about it, because if that was rugby league, that'd be on the highlights and everyone would be going, come on, how good is it?
Yeah.
I've been drawing my stick figures.
Get your vivid out. Come on.
So look,
do some.
So this is why we shouldn't be talking about it and we should be celebrating it, right? So here we go. So we know that this is a no, right?
That's the other.
Look at the other side, sorry. This is a no. Look at his body shape. That means you're going to hit him in the head. This is risk, right? So right now he's at risk, but he's legal. His arms are forward. This is probably in the same. It's risk, but it's good technique. Look at the straightness of his back. His head's down. He's wrapping, right? So I don't know why we're talking about this, because he's accelerating also. And this is how good? Like, how good? Like, we should be showing this to young people on how you should tackle. The thing I like about him is he is accelerating into contact, right? And this is a no. This is back here. Only because it's actually there for technique, but it's late. And he got penalised for that, right? So that's it, I've had enough of my stick figures. We've been talking about trying to get a new Jerome Kaino since he retired, right? And this guy is going out there and he's being physical. Now, I don't think there's any malice in it, is there, Mills? He's technically correct and he's physical. Let's celebrate it.
Well, it's legal. It's legal. I mean, and what I commend the referees at the moment is they've checked it, right? But they're not saying it's not legal. They've gone and checked it. The one that you're talking about with, I think it was the Reds, that was late, and that's what he got done for. There is risk in that, and that's what he's taken on board. There is risk every sort of time, but his timing is perfect. He's under, he's kind of dipped, he's looking to wrap. Everything about that is what you're saying. So we should be talking about it, and we should be celebrating the fact he's getting it right. Not the late one, but he's actually getting it right.
Look, he's running a risk, though. I think he is running a risk if he gets it slightly wrong. And he has to live with those consequences.
I've got to get my thing.
I
threw it away.
I know he's thrown a script away, but for me, I think it's really important that he understands, and he knows this. If he gets it wrong, if his head position's wrong, he doesn't get to your good position, okay, that risk position, but if he gets it wrong, there will be consequences. Yeah. But I have no issues with what he's doing right now, and the fact he's going through it. Now, yes, he got penalised, but ultimately the contact's legal, the technique is legal. Look, we're in a situation where we've got other players on the field we're allowing to duck their heads and just run into each other. This is something we shouldn't be talking about. There are other areas in the game we should target or look at, and I don't think I'll be surprised if it was around the other way. Now that if Australia had a big blindside flanker who's going out and doing this, I don't think we'd be hearing about this. It was them that I think.
Well, I'd just like to say to our Australian listeners and viewers that you just had your, like, if rugby league is your biggest competition and AFL is your biggest competition, we should be celebrating this stuff, not moaning.
At the risk of further upsetting a Knight of the Realm, I did want to raise the issue, though, that because there has been such a kerfuffle, whether or not you think that it is warranted, surely the refs at this stage now are going to be keeping a closer eye on him. Will that impact then how he's thinking about it and the actions that he takes?
So, Goldie, this is what he needs to do. And remember the great Mark Graham, one of our greatest rugby league players, he said it's always harder for taller guys to get down. So all he needs to do at training is just try and get to really good. And then nothing will happen to him. The reason he's a little bit at risk, because he could pop up on contact.
We've been searching for someone to go out there and do this since Jerome Kano and Shannon Frizzell had grown into that position and doing it. But ultimately, as you said, Mills, the referees are not looking at this. The referees are not looking at this and not going to look at it.
They've done it. Keep doing it. It's good.
Well, you could say the same down south. Keep doing it. It's good if you're a Crusaders fan, because they finally got win number 2 on the board. Big one over the Rebels. Goldie, you were there. Could you feel the relief from Nelson to Timaru?
Absolutely, but you got the sense right from the very, very start this is going to be a different game when the Rebel scrum was going backwards from minute 1. And at minute 30, they're yanking their front row, and the dominance they got up front was Crusader of old. But this was a very disappointing Rebel side. The Rebels have got a really difficult run in, but have they turned a corner? We'll find out when they play the Reds this week, because you've got to back it up again.
Well, I think they're still a team that's playing with a lack of confidence, because midway through the second half, I thought the Rebels could have really put some pressure on them, and they just didn't, right? They looked lacking in confidence. I think that win will do a lot for their confidence, but I still think they've got quite a way to go. There's still some stuff in their game that I think if you get a team against you that's going to put you under pressure, I don't know if they've got that confidence yet.
But there's positive stuff as well. Like, I mean, how confident can you be when you're scrum and you're getting scrum dominance, set piece dominance as well? You're getting guys like Scott Barrett going up and win stuff like this.
Yeah.
And we know that has been always a Crusaders' strength over the years, and they've kind of lost it. So that's opened up a little bit of confidence within the group as well, and then they've sort of chanced you. I tend to agree with you. There's a patch here just before half-time. I think they were up 10-0 or something like that. And the Rebels still had a chance to possibly go in there, you know, at 10-3. But when you're getting so much dominance and what they sort of love, this opens things up. This is going to be a huge relief for them. I think, you know, I mean, they've been under pressure, you know, since they lost in the Aussie games, but that's massive.
The Scott Barrett factor, because obviously he is one key difference in the game on the weekend, and we have debated, and I'm sure many people have debated, how much of a difference one player can make. Did that show it?
100%. I mean, just his presence, I think, would have helped, right? But then when you go up and do what he's sort of done in the game, and the influence that he had, particularly earlier on, we just had to look at. I mean, he's part of that scrum.
But their line-out wasn't misfiring either.
Yeah.
So the line-out's operating, the scrum's dominant. He's doing his work in the middle of the pack there. So to me, I said earlier on, right before the season started, when it gets to this time of the year where it's a little bit colder, it was dewy down there, the conditions suit what they've got in their frame, they're going to be incredibly hard to beat at home now, which puts them in that position now they can push for the playoffs. But what I do love, and was my favourite moment of the game, was actually the substitutions and their preparation to come on in a game where you think you need to warm up, get yourself ready. Here's a couple of older senior dogs, Owen Franks and Joe Moody. And they didn't even move in very fast there to get the jackets off. And this was their one warm-up drill before they went on to a Super Rugby game. And about 10 seconds after that, their numbers went up and they just trotted on. And what does Owen Franks go and do? He scores his 3rd try in Super Rugby.
It's 2-11.
2-10. His 3rd try in Super Rugby in 160, 70 games. Unbelievable. But I say that in jest, but you think about that level of experience. And if you want your set piece to continue doing what you're doing, and Cody Taylor, I saw before the game, is not too far away. More reinforcements.
I was talking to this guy on the plane, right? Around the bar. And,
hold on, is there a bar in your plane? Hold on. Where are you sitting?
What are you at, mate?
Do you need to ask?
But anyway,
what's going on?
Anyway, he said to me, "So what's going on? What's going on with the Crusaders?" And I said, "Well, name 7 of them," and he couldn't. You know, this is the first time for a long time that they haven't been stacked with All Blacks, right? You think about it. There's a lot of young guys in the team. So the Scott Barrett, his influence on these young guys and just bringing a calm head. But if Barrett wasn't there last time. Whitelock was there. You know, you had all these players all the time. The second question he asked me is, well, Scott Robinson, how many will he pick for the All Blacks? Because always guys from the Crusaders promoted themselves by being top of the table, by winning, right? But how many of those guys in the current Crusaders are putting their hand up for the All Blacks? It's a really good question.
And there's a lot of guys, like you say, who aren't there now, you know, and who haven't been playing a lot. And some of those players who are available for selection aren't even playing in New Zealand right now. So critical, like you say, that guys do put up their hand. They've got time. Have they got time, the Crusaders? They'd like to extend their season to the playoffs, right? So that gives you more of an opportunity to go out and perform and to play. So we've got a thing called a playoff predictor. So what it does is it crunches the numbers. We've got 10,000 statistics, and it's availability of players, it's availability of the teams coming up, it's what your schedule looks like. So before round 10, this last round, okay, this is where you sit right now in terms of your teams going into the weekend. The Hurricanes, Blues, the Brumbies, the Chiefs, the Rebels and Reds, they look really safe and tight, don't they, going through, because they've got to that magical number of 5 wins. You get to there, generally you're going to get there. But here are the other teams who are scrapping for those spots, those 7 and 8 spots, remembering the Crusaders are one of those. The Drua, the Highlanders, Moana Pacifica were in Fiji. The Crusaders and, of course, the Waratahs and the Force. The Highlanders played the Force. So, after the results of the weekend, that massive win from the Highlanders, the dominant performance, 7-6 it was, down in Dunedin, this is what it means. What does it change now? So the Crusaders now are up to 59% chance of going through the playoffs. Doesn't mean too much for these other sides on the side over here, because they've pretty much done what they need to do. This is where it's going to shift. Massive for Fiji and Drua. Up 16 to 53%. The Highlanders up 13% to 45. Moana Pacifica, they take a hit. That's a massive game again in Tonga this weekend between them and the Highlanders in season. The Waratahs have won 2 games. Two games, both against the Crusaders. Can you believe that? And the Force, they're down to 14%. The Waratahs, 13%. There's your big mover though. The Crusaders, 59% chance, gentlemen, and I said that.
Can I ask you a question about the Highlanders?
Well, you can.
Was there a hole in the roof down there the other night?
Wait.
Like, perfect conditions.
They didn't concede a try. They didn't concede a try.
Did it rain inside or something?
Hey.
There is a reason they're not on the rundown team, all right?
How often do you say that? How often do you say it doesn't matter how much you win by, how much the Blues are going to win? It doesn't matter as long as it's by 1. Well, guess what? By 1. Didn't even concede a try. Defended our line stoutly.
That was the worst game of rugby I've seen for a long time.
You know what's interesting about that table that you've got there, and particularly if you're an Australian fan, right? I mean, it's the top 4 that I'm really interested about, because the Aussie teams do not travel well, so they've got to get their teams into the top 4.
So
and look at the way they've kind of played when our teams go over there. So the top 4 for me, and placement in there, and to get a home final or home quarter is really important if you're from the other side of the ditch.
Yeah, and Super Rugby needs to drop it to a top 6, not a top 8.
Oh. That is a whole... You've just opened an entire can of worms.
We're going to try and pay the bills.
All I'm hearing in my ear is, let's go to the break, and then you
bring up that.
Something like
Welcome
that
back, Sir John Kirwan. Welcome back, Sir John Kirwan.
All I need to do is send a text to Kirst and ask her how on earth I'm meant to get control in this situation. Right, this is how. I'm talking over everyone. We're going to a trivia question for you today. The question for the break: who played the most tests for the All Blacks without scoring a try? We'll leave you to ponder that one while we come out with a few thoughts on the Hurricanes' loss. And we've also got the Rugby Australia chairman, Dan Herbert, joining us after the break. It'll be a good chat. Stay with us. No, my hooky mai, welcome back to the breakdown. If you've been pondering that trivia question for you, the All Blacks play the most tests, or to play the most tests without scoring a try. The answer, you might have guessed, it was one of the old dogs, not the junkyard dogs, the old dogs that Goldie was talking about earlier. Do you want a waff? It is, of course, Owen Franks, who, incidentally, we'll remember his great stint with the Hurricanes, which leads me to my next segment of chat. The Hurricanes, they are no longer unbeaten this season, suffering their first loss of Super Rugby Pacific to the Brumbies. These are some of the highlights here. What are we putting this down to, team? Is this a worrying sign or a blip?
I think it's a great loss. It's your perfect loss. No, it is, because they were average in their accuracy, and that's so fixable. They'll go on Monday and they'll all be disappointed in themselves. The amount of time they turned it over, 50-50 passes that they haven't been doing, and Mills, that's easy stuff to fix.
Yeah, they'll be confident with it. I mean, Ideally, they wouldn't have wanted, they would have wanted to continue their winning streak. But the fact is, you've seen how good were the Brumbies also. Back at home, got the opportunities. They took them. They're probably coming and plateauing a little bit. But you're right. I think it's good things that it can go away and actually fix before they sort of ramp things up again.
I think the week before took its toll against the Drua. The fact that they went over there and they played really, really well. We're down to 13 men. I think going there and then going to Canberra wouldn't have been easy to get from Fiji down into Canberra. And we know it's hard to play there. They would have been surprised by the great conditions. Quite often this time of the year in Canberra, it's not like that. Yeah. But the afternoon game, all of a sudden, it was on top of the ground. I think more importantly for this competition, it was the turnaround from the Brumbies. To be so bad the week before at Eden Park against the Blues, to then go home and to show what they're actually capable of. And I think Valentini at 6 was a nice little change for them in regards to their loose forward trio and the way he impacted the game. He was a little bit wider. We saw there his offload game, whereas they've been using him as a bit of a battering ram, and he kept putting up his hand, but it wasn't working for them. So I think massive for them. I do support your theory, but it won't do them any harm. It's nice to get a grounding at some point as a team. And when you're playing as well as they were playing, this was just a reminder of the fact if you don't prepare well, then all of a sudden you get under pressure. So
how good is the Blues Hurricanes going to be?
Oh,
how physical
couple
is
of weeks'
that
time.
going to be?
I did want to pick you up on what you're talking about with the Brumbies, though, because, and actually it ties into something you were saying earlier as well, Mills, about the Australian teams and how good they are at home. We know that the Brumbies are a good team at home. So on the evidence of this, do they have to finish top 4 to be a hope of challenging for the title for real?
Well, they've been there or thereabouts every year, and they've fallen short when they sort of haven't. They've won, finals games. They need to be. They need to be able to do that because they haven't sort of travelled away and sort of won. And hence the reason why I said that. The Australian teams, whilst they've gotten the bridge the gap a lot more over the years, right, against the New Zealand sort of teams, they need this to be able to sort of push through. They need the 4 or at least 3 in there to actually really compete in this competition because they haven't sort of shown that in the rounds.
Well, one man who would have been absolutely thrilled to see that win would have been Rugby Australia chair Dan Herbert. He's going to be joining us shortly. First, though, let's just take a little trot down memory lane to see some of the highs and lows for Australian rugby in the last few months.
And a result 69 years in the making. Sees Fiji beat Australia.
And it's on here big time for Wales. They'll score. It's a record loss at the World Cup. Australia will exit in the pool stages. It's the upset of Super Round that nobody saw coming.
The unbeaten run is over as the Brumbies who break it.
Yes, some very interesting times indeed. Well, Dan Herbert, the chair of Australia Rugby, is here with us now. Dan, thank you so much for your time. We very much appreciate you coming on the breakdown. I wanted to start with the news that's been in the headlines the last couple of days. This is this proposal for an ANZAC Day Bledisloe test. I understand you tabled it at recent meetings with New Zealand Rugby. What was the Kiwi response? Is this something that actually might happen?
Oh, look, I can't speak for New Zealand Rugby at this stage. It's only in the very early discussion stages. It's something that we think is a good idea. We think it'd be a really significant thing for the game, certainly over here in terms of, breaking up or creating a really good product that we think it could be equivalent of something like a Boxing Day test in cricket. And we think that we need to keep innovating. We know that whilst there's been plenty of changes around the Super Rugby format, we think the constant evolution and innovation of some of our products is needed, and we think this is one that would really create some significant eyeballs and get out of just the traditional, rugby market over here in Australia. But look, there's a few other things that we have to talk through with New Zealand, but they're open to the idea, which is all we can ask.
Dan, look, obviously a lot of things have happened with Australian rugby over the last couple of years, and you're a really competitive market in Australia. Can you give us a sort of state of the nation, health of the game in Australia right now?
Yeah, it's two speeds really. I mean, if you look at the community game over here, it's going really well in most places. I wouldn't say across the board, but club rugby in some of the cities is going better than it's ever gone. It's still very strong in schools. I think where we're struggling a little bit is at the professional level. We've been struggling there for a little while on the field. and that's reflected off the field. I think financially, our position has been pretty well spoken about, and we've got some challenges. I think we've been living beyond our means for a period of time now, and hoping that quick fix will come around. But we've tried to take a much more pragmatic view that it's going to take a little time, but we've just got to make sure that we're at the pointy end. We've got some really big events coming up, and we've got to make sure that we're competitive in those, and we not only go well against the Lions, but in a home World Cup when we've got the eyes of the world upon us. It's a great opportunity for us to put the game on the map here again, and we just got to make sure we perform well on the field.
Daniel, Mr. Chairman, how are you, mate? Good to see you.
Thanks, JK. I'm going okay.
I was incredibly disappointed that the championship did not extend to the Japanese and the Fijian. Was that sort of self-interest politicking? When are we going to start putting the game first, mate? Because it seemed like common sense to me. Where did you stand on it? Yeah.
Look, I think we've got to be, again, I go back to, we've got to innovate. I don't think rugby's always got this battle of tradition versus what we need to do moving forward. And I think you look at, I was at the Reds and the Blues game last night, and both teams played really well. And the Reds are playing pretty well this year. I think if they were playing like that 10 years ago, you get 30,000+ in the crowd. We had 16.5, which is not a bad crowd. But in this market, it should be double that if they're playing like they are now. The Brumbies playing really, really well. They had 8,000 there. Back in the glory days, they were filling up Bruce Stadium, 20,000. So winning's not enough. We've got to win, but we've actually got to look at how we innovate our products. And I just think the way that people are consuming media now is a little bit different. So I think we've got to be innovating the product, how we present that product. And, if you look at the noisy part of our game is always that traditional fan who's been around for a long time. But if you're not filling that up with new fans, then you're in a bit of trouble. And that's my fear. So innovation, I think you've got to look at all these things around, who's coming in. You look at Fiji, what they've added to Super Rugby, men's and women's. I mean, it's brilliant. And, so I think we've continually got to look at how we can innovate the competition and the product.
Dan? Oh, sorry, mate. Sorry, mate. I just wondered why we're not extending our championship for Japan and Fiji. I mean, is it a financial discussion? Was Aussie for it? Where's it fallen over?
Oh, look, I'm not too sure, JK. I think it's always a conversation. I wasn't directly involved in that one at the time, but it may be in the future at some point. But right now, I know from looking at from something previously that was around some of the economics of it, but we do have to look beyond that as well. But I can't give you a definitive answer. I think there's a lot of different aspects that I would think.
Dan, I want to talk about the Rebels because obviously there's a lot that's been happening around their sort of financial state. Where are you confident the fact that they might be able to hold, you obviously hold the licence, hold their spot there, given the innovation you're sort of speaking about, and I suppose, are you both aligned in terms of making this sort of, or making their statement stay?
Well, look, it comes down to, I've said, it's around the viability of the franchise. We've been living beyond our means as a game. We've got probably a point now where Rugby Australia itself has had to borrow money and has had to bail out the Rebels in the past. And we're not in a position to do that moving forward. So a lot of it will come down to, the people who are involved. There's a potential consortium. It'll depend on the viability of what they can do going forward.
Dan, do you have any idea on when they'll actually get an answer as to whether there will be some sort of rescue package or not? Because I imagine the uncertainty must be quite difficult.
Yeah, it is. And we're going through, there's a legal process to go through at the moment, which we have to go through. So we've got to be, quite guarded with what we say publicly and the action that we can take. So we're going through that process at the moment. There's been an administrator's report handed down and there'll be further discussion. There's another creditors meeting coming up over the next week. After that, we'll have some discussions and hopefully at that point we'll have all the information we need.
Dan, you mentioned on the upside, though, there's been some stronger performances and the entertainment value and the quality of some of the teams that are playing in this competition out of Australia this year. The Rebels have been one of those, shown some really positive signs. When you look at it as a whole, though, do you think this idea of expansion, because we keep talking about change, do we need to look further afield? Is Japan a big part of the conversation you guys are having in Australia? Because we often talk about it here in New Zealand, this relationship with Japan. Do you see that as part of the future?
I see it as a potential part of the future. I think those conversations will be had, and a lot of it comes down to you've got to get everyone on the page, and including Japan. And if there's an appetite from Japan, I think that would be that'd be a starting point. Everyone's always looking to make sure they protect their own product, and as well, and looking to see what a new entrant would add to the competition. We've got to be careful, I think, around that. Whilst we've got to innovate, we've got to make sure that it's something that's viable as well. And I can't speak for for what might happen in that part of the world, but we've seen ourselves in regard to what's happened with the Rebels, that if you expand too quickly and you don't have that, I guess, underbody of support coming through, that it can be really difficult. And it's a really expensive exercise to run a franchise now. From Australia's point of view, we need to make sure they're viable. From an Australian-New Zealand point of view, any new entrants coming in, both parties that have to get, I guess, some comfort around that, and then Japan would have to be interested in how that would work. So there's a bit to unfold there, I think. Yeah.
Daniel, it's fair to say that the relationships between New Zealand and Australia has been a little bit strained after for the last few years. Coming in as a new chairman, what are a couple of your goals, sort of in the next couple of years?
Well, in terms of the relationship with New Zealand, I think it needed a reset. I don't think there's a lot to be gained by, we're relying on each other, in my view. We need both Australia and New Zealand strong in this part of the world if we're to have any influence at World Rugby level, and I think we're stronger as a package. So, that one of my goals is just to reset the relationship, to make sure that we can together build the best competitions, and that if possible at super level, but also at international level. And there's a lot of potential crossover there that I think, the sum of the parts can be greater than, A plus B. So I think that's an important thing for me. In terms of what we want to do over the next few years, we've got some financial constraints that we've got these two big products coming down the pipeline. We need to make sure our on-field. So when I put my hand up to join the board, it was really just around resetting the high-performance environment, trying to get the provinces on page with the national body to make sure that everyone's working hand in glove, because that wasn't working all that effectively here. Our high performance unit hasn't been, I guess, a really professional part of the organisation or of the game for some time now. So putting some really capable people in there was something that we wanted to do, to make sure that in both the men's and women's area we had some good people there, and then just to run some good process to get some good people on board. We're a people game at the end of the day. So, once we can get some people on board, manage the expectation around the quick fix. I think Australia's always been guilty in recent times of sort of looking back to yesteryear when we were more successful and thinking that's just around the next corner. But in reality, it takes a bit of time, and you've got to put the right things in place first, and people are a big part of that. So my immediate aim was, coming onto the board, was try to get the provinces and the national teams working more closely together to be more aligned, and then get some good people in the national setup that can drive that, I guess, capability and trust with the provinces. We get that part right, then I think we're halfway home. 60% of the revenue driven through the game in Australia comes through the Wallabies. We need to make sure the Wallabies are performing, and they don't have to win all the time, but they need to win as often as they lose. And we need to make sure that, when we play you guys so frequently, and New Zealand is such a strong benchmark, we need to make sure that we win every now and then to keep the market guessing.
Interesting stuff indeed. Dan, hey, thank you so much for joining us on The Breakdown. We do appreciate your time. All the best with the year ahead.
Thank you, guys.
Wow, plenty to chew over in that one. I do want to start with a phrase that was mentioned more than once. We've been living beyond our means. Is that sending a pretty clear signal about what's happening, at least from an RA perspective, when it comes to the Rebels?
Well, it absolutely is. I mean, he's gone in there. There's a lot of financial hurt within, not the Rebels, but the Rugby Australia. I like some of the stuff he's actually mentioned, the resetting the relationship with New Zealand, growing the sort of provinces to be aligned, with the national team, and sort of making that revenue and sort of being innovative, right? The right guy, fantastic player, and some of the stuff that when he was back, but some of the stuff he's saying as a chairman now, it gives you confidence that there might be some alignment happening between both countries.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll be outstanding. I think the relationship needs to be rebuilt. I mean, it was really interesting. What's our revenue percentage? It's interesting you put that out there. What do you say, 60% Wallabies, right? So they've got bigger challenges than us, just with the competition of NRL And, you know, one of the sports we should all study is the AFL. You know, that's a game that should be in Melbourne, and it's spreading all the time, and a lot of youngsters playing. So they've got a lot more challenges, and he's a good guy, and he's a good man. You'll get transparency and honesty out of him, and he'll work really, really hard for the right things, which is high performance, building players, getting their finances back on track.
So they brought David Nusafora back from Ireland, who set up that whole program with Joe Schmidt and led them towards the success they're now experiencing under Andy Farrell. So they've brought back someone to set up that program. I love what he said about getting the provinces on board and getting a line there. Are we listening? Are we listening around
That's funny.
this country
That's funny you should say that. What's been happening?
No, we're not going to go into that. So we're not going into that. But I'm just saying, interesting. He's talking about that alignment. He felt as though the club game was strong. He felt school rugby was good. All of these alignment pieces he's talking about. He's obviously a clear rugby man about working out exactly how he believes this pyramid should grow. Right? I look at it, and by bringing in Joe Schmidt and by bringing in David Nusafora, he's recognised there's obviously experience and success at establishing a program, and that's something. And after we heard the debacle that was the Eddie Jones experiment, and the amount of money and relationships and this organisation that it put inside that Australian rugby fraternity, they're now looking to deal with that. So obviously for Australia, they've got a lot of challenges at home, but I like some of these he said, but particularly those around bringing everyone into alignment, bringing everyone together to find the right outcomes.
And it just seems like he's realistic, right? I mean, there's a lot of hurt in terms of the money they have to fork up to try and keep the Rebels. We've said it every year, you know, you probably lose a team to be able to sort of strengthen. We've seen how close they bridge that gap. They're actually really competing now, the Aussie team. So it's almost like saying, well, it's right there in front of them. Okay, they're costing them a lot of money. Even if we got rid of one, focus on the high performance, bring that bottom level up, and then compete against the All Blacks. Even to come out and say they don't have to win every Test match. I mean, that's resetting and saying, well, we've got to get that bottom right first, and one of them is costing us a lot of money. So even if it means we lose one, so be it.
I like the political side of it as well, where he said we need to work together. You know, I think that Super Rugby's got to show a lot more courage in the rule changes. I think the product is way better. The refs have come on board. They're speeding it up. But if World Rugby aren't going to move fast enough, if we're not together, Mills, as Australia and New Zealand and the rest of the Pacific, they won't care. Whereas I reckon Super Rugby, we should just go, we're not going to listen to you. We're going to do what's best for our game. We're going to change some rules, speed it up. Not change rules, but speed it up. But we can't do that if we're fighting. And after their last chairman, McLennan, it was just all fighting and coming out in the media, and no one got on, and it was really destructive for the game.
Right, well, if we're all in this together, how do we feel about his proposition of an ANZAC Day Bledisloe test?
Well, that's a bigger picture for me. So Super Rugby has to extend. NPC has to fold under our Super Rugby so that then we can have a few more windows for either, you know, a tournament with the Japanese coming in or these tests one-off. But when are we going to make some decisions, people, about what's happening?
Imagine,
please.
But imagine breaking for a weekend for a Bledisloe Cup at ANZAC. Imagine that, Mills. How good would that be? You get halfway through a Super Rugby competition, both Australia and New Zealand select their side. I mean, that would be huge.
Yeah, it'd be great if there's same rules for everybody. Yeah. So if I was coach, I know what I'd say. I need longer to prepare. Shut up, JK. Your coach, just coach. So you get together on a Monday morning and you play Australia on the Saturday. Bring it on.
Like we used to.
Bring it on.
I'd love that. That'll be, I mean, even forget the other stuff around it. As long as the rules are the same for both sides, man, I'm in for it.
We're in.
Yeah, practicalities to work out, but hey, we love an idea. Stay with us. We've got plenty more to come, including more chat about what's coming up next week in Super Rugby Pacific as that table just keeps on tightening.
This is our first time assembling for 2024. It's always exciting this time of year, seeing returning faces and seeing all the new faces. Be rewarded with the opportunity to potentially wear a black jersey. I love that. I love seeing that.
Yeah, it's really good to get together actually. Or this time last year, I only just got my management group together. So to have them all and have a real good look at Opiki and see where our ladies are tracking, but with a lens on the future, obviously, and getting the right group of ladies together that we think can do the job. So it's good to sort of be able to have a group of us doing that this time. Yeah, well, there's some areas that we really want to work on and start building, and it might be quite new, but we need to go through some change because the game's evolving. It's evolving from where we just beat England at the World Cup final. They've evolved because they've had to, and I think through the end of last year we're trying to do the same thing that did the job for us at World Cup, and it's not serving us anymore.
England WXV1 champions, world number ones, an unbeaten season for the Red Roses.
I think that the failure to perform at the end of last year was a gift. It shone a light, an uncomfortable light, on the things that we weren't doing, not just as a team but as individuals. I'm grateful that happened then, and it happened sooner rather than later, so that we can continue to be innovative as a team, as a coaching group and as players. Definitely part of territory is probably not a big thing here in our women's game. They want to run everything, but you can see some real clear stats across all rugby at the moment. The team that wins the territory usually wins the games, but use it as it's a weapon. It's not a passive part of our game, and our skills under pressure. I think the women's game's really shifted intensity-wise and sort of line speed and pressure-wise, but our skill development hasn't. There's a real sort of power, fitness, a physical aspect that we really want to work and shift this group, and we sort of stayed still for a bit. But we don't want to lose us, and we don't want to play like the rest. We still want to play like we do too. The Pacific Four is quite a cool tournament. It hasn't been around for too long, and fortunately for us, the last 2 years we've been triumphant. I think you'll see a Black Ferns team with really high standards that enhances the mana of this team when no stone is left unturned. The foundations that'll be laid in that tournament as we approach WXV at the end of the year, and then also our pinnacle year next year with World Cup, will be aligned in the sand.
Yes, cannot wait to see the Black Ferns back in action and on New Zealand soil as well. How good, especially a year out from the World Cup, so it is going to be massive. If you're wondering, I would like to get some tickets for that, well, thankfully we have the answer for you. All you need to do is scan that QR code right there. That'll give you all the information you need for the test that they are playing in that Pacific Four series against the US, Canada and Australia in Hamilton, Christchurch and up in Auckland as well. Scan that QR code to get your tickets, get along and support the Black Ferns as they start their international season this year. Cannot wait. Also, gents, cannot wait for the next weekend ahead. Every week I'm saying this, but it holds true. I'm being genuine about it, I promise. Not least because the Crusaders, huge test against the Reds at home if they want to continue this trajectory that they've just started to go on.
Well, as we saw earlier on, all of a sudden every weekend means something significant for most of the teams. Yes, you've got teams that feel comfortable, but they're playing for where they play their playoff games, right? So are they at home? Are they on the road? Like you talked about, Mills. But ultimately, some of these games, particularly, say, for the Highlanders, Moana Pacifica, this could define their season in Tonga. This result sets them up with the opportunity to possibly go on and make the playoffs. If they don't win, their chances significantly reduces.
Yeah, you totally agree. I mean, the top four, top five, they're sort of looking at placement in terms of the top, home quarterfinals. The bottom sort of side, there's still places up for grabs, and so placement. We're getting to sort of the real sort of business end of these quarterfinals being picked up. So there's lots to play for. But, time's running out for some of these teams as well, JK.
He's only watching one game.
I think, yeah.
You're watching the Blues, let's be honest.
Blues on tour. I think the interesting thing for me is that the sign of a healthy competition is when you have you're off by 5% and you get thumped like the Brumbies did. Hurricanes go there, they're off by 5%, they get beaten.
Yep.
So that's really, really important coming into these final stages of the tournament. You can't be off. The Crusaders, I'm really, really honestly happy for them that they're getting back on track, but they've got to show some consistency. And the Reds are probably, I believe, one of the better sides when they get their game together.
You've changed after 3 weeks away. I'd never thought I'd heard you say those words ever come out of your mouth that you feel happy for the Crusaders. You've grown. We'll see when you're playing them in the knockout game in the quarterfinal how happy you are.
I tell you what, we're not far away from Crusaders Highlanders either, so I'm expecting some serious banter from you two when it comes to that. Can't wait either for Moana Pacifica, of course, over in Tonga up against the Highlanders. It's all good stuff. See you next week.
Malulava Lesoipua. Greetings from Apia, where Super Rugby history awaits. And Tuala is heading for the corner. And once again, Moana Pasifika strike back. There's now a little dab and Vunivalu. Well, that's beautifully worked by the Reds. And
How about the end of Virgil Brilliant?
now Tamatama Noai puts the kick ahead. Can he get the bounce? Medical Fa'ilongi has got 2 tries in front of a delirious home crowd.